Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone to the Book Hinge, our virtual home away from home. And I wanted to begin tonight with, it's in honor of Maya Angelou, who's sort of I don't know, in some way she has managed to touch everyone, I think. And I think it says a lot for the power of the writer. So let me start with a quote from Maya Angelou. She said, "We write for the same reason that we walk, talk, climb mountains, or swim the oceans, because we can. We have some impulse within us that makes us want to explain ourselves to other human beings. That's why we paint. That's why we dare to love someone, because we have the impulse to explain who we are. Not just how tall we are or thin, but who we are internally, perhaps even spiritually. There's something which impels us to show our inner souls. The more courageous we are, the more we succeed in explaining what we know." Well, I have two, I hope, but I know definitely one already with this courageous writer. Yes. And I actually think beyond spoken word, which you'll hear from Oliver, will tell us more about, I think fan fiction writing takes courage too. So it's going to be very interesting to talk with Oliver. Oliver, let me just introduce my group to you. We'll have them each speak. Up first, you have Bethany.
Hi, I'm Bethany. Hi.
And you might tell her where you're coming from in terms of, she knows you're grad students. But
They.
yes, that's right. They know you're grad students, and you can explain it, so I won't be the only one making mistakes. Bethany?
I'm in the MAT program at State, so I'm studying to be a teacher, high school teacher, and my concentration is English, so I'm definitely interested in young adult lit and any kind of writing, but fan fiction is something that I don't know that much about, so I'm very excited about tonight. And I am once again in a hotel room, so there's that. But yeah.
You're coming to us loud and clear. You're doing well on these trips.
Good.
Okay, who's next? Just speak right up.
My name is Jill Zappia, and I'm a 6th grade language arts teacher in Wake County, and I'm also a grad student, which you know.
I'm Sadie. I'm an ESL teacher from Beijing of China. I teach senior high school students.
So we have a rather diverse group, which makes it much more interesting. And Laya is at work here, so she's going to send me another email soon. So, Oliver, we would love to hear a little bit about your fan fiction writing, and perhaps you'd like to share some.
I could do that. I've actually pulled it up so I can know exactly what I'm talking about.
All right.
Where do you want me to start?
You know, we've got questions for you.
Oh, good.
But what's most fascinating to me is why.
So I started reading fan fiction a lot earlier than I started writing it, borrowing that one attempt at when I was 11 that we are not talking about. But I started reading fan fiction because it allows for so much creativity within a world that someone's already created. And it's just an idea. For me, what I like a lot about it is that there's so much more representation than I can find in regular fiction. So all of my stuff, I write for a very small audience. I write queer Shakespeare fan fiction. Other people do it. It's not just me, but I started writing fan fiction and publishing it on an online site last fall, and it was a friend of mine had issued a challenge of what if was rewriting the end of Romeo and Juliet or something. So, but mine involved Juliet in the 1950s running away and meeting Ophelia, and it went from there.
Is that the piece you're going to share, or?
Um, I can. I also wrote one a couple weeks ago that you've heard, where I took Romeo and who I changed the character from a boy to. Right now, she identifies as a girl. We'll see how that changes throughout the rest of the piece. And then they meet. She meets Juliet in a one-night stand in something that I like to think vaguely remembers the 1930s, because I was doing a push back then. So.
All right, well, make your choice. Your choice.
Sorry?
It's your choice which you'd like to share.
Okay. Should I do that now?
Yes, why not?
Okay. I'll do the most recent piece I did, and then we can go from there. It's called Love is a Speeding Train, because I hate coming up with titles, but Romeo is train hopping again. Bottle of whiskey and a new level every town again. Lost her boots in a bet the last town over, running barefoot again. There's a couple of guys who jumped on a couple towns ago, followed her from one train to the next, stay in corner of the container, throwing glances her way when they think she can't see them. She can see them. Keeps her boot knife in plain view, thinks about showing off the pistol she took from her father's stash before running, decides not to. Romeo switches trains before he decides to have some fun with her. It doesn't look good leaving beat-up bodies on trains behind her. She heads north. Juliet sings at a bar on the north side of the tracks. She goes home with girls in full skirts and pumps, wakes up with lipstick stains, never stays for breakfast. She goes to church in short skirts and scandalizes Sister Lawrence over drinks after service. When Romeo walks into the bar, all false courage and exhaustion, Juliet doesn't have to think twice. She buys Romeo a drink, throws her a wink and a nod as she sings. The bar is full of soldiers taking advantage of their leave, their sweethearts, the factory girls. When Juliet gets off stage, there is a drink waiting for her. Romeo goes home with a pretty singer from the bar. Gets fucked, fucks, leaves before breakfast covered in bite marks and lipstick. The bite marks she hides under her shirt, the lipstick she can't. There's no one on the next train north to judge her.
I think an appropriate question would be one that Jill came up with about characters and who they belong to. Would you like to pitch it, Jill?
Yeah, absolutely. Oliver, have you read Fangirl?
I started it. A friend then stole my copy and never gave it back to me. Then returned it to the library. So I got a few pages into it, and then he was like, "Just give this to me." So I did, and I never got the chance to finish reading it.
Okay. Do you think you will?
If I ever have time again.
Okay. Right on. Well, in one of the characters in Fangirl, Kath, the main character, writes fanfic, and when she's in college, sorry, I got distracted because you opened the capture thing. When she's in college, she has this writing professor, and she works really hard on a fanfic piece about Simon Snow, which is not very well veiled reference to Harry Potter. And her teacher gives her a 0 on it and says it's plagiarism. So to what extent do you feel that authors own their characters, and to what extent can other authors use them and kind of call them their own?
There's a point. I've actually had some conversation like this with a friend of mine who objected to me taking what he considered were iconic Shakespeare characters and doing things that he didn't approve with them. But at some point, I think characters take on a life of their own in a way. So like it's like nobody who writes fan fiction pretends that these characters were theirs to begin with. They're just borrowing them. There's no money involved, so they're not making anything but fun. with them. So, to an extent, no, everybody still remembers that these characters belong to these authors or this television show, this movie, or whatever. Um, so there's a point where the authors own them, and they are the author's intellectual property, but you're just borrowing. I feel like there's a lot of things borrowing them with the intent not to use them in the same way that the author did.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Your response reminded me that, there is a theory that all creativity is combinatorial. It's pulling things together, from everything that's come before. One of my favorite paintings by Velázquez, La Minuas, was beloved by Picasso, and he actually created 58 paintings based on it. Now, his paintings look nothing like it.
And a lot of times, fanfic looks nothing like the original thing. It's the amount of creativity people have with it is kind of amazing.
Yeah. It would be interesting to check, Jill. I'll have to see if there's been any lawsuits about fan fiction.
I know there have been some authors who complain about it, but I haven't heard. Most of the authors that people don't usually like a lot as people. They like their work, but they don't particularly care for them as people. But there have been some complaints by authors about people writing fanfic, but I haven't heard of any lawsuits, and I'd be interested to see how that, if there are, and how that ended.
Well, there's an advantage to writing Shakespeare fan fiction.
That nobody cares.
Does anybody? Oh, please.
The other thing is, it's pretty much copyright is pretty much dead at this point. So.
Yes. Well, and Shakespeare borrowed freely from others too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
He was very combinatorial creatively. Okay. How about other questions from our group? Yes.
I don't bite.
Do you have any more? I'm sorry, but Bethany, you said you didn't know much about fan fiction. You know more now. What do you think? You have any questions?
I do. I have a question. You just said that you recently were published. How does that work with fan fiction?
So with fan fiction, it's very much self-publishing. It's online, and really, it's anything. People will post it on Tumblr, on LiveJournal. There are a lot of LiveJournal communities. There are some websites that are dedicated to fan art, fan fiction, fans' work, etc. The one that I like and the one that I've published on is called Archive of Our Own, which is also known as AO3. And it's, in my opinion, the best site for that kind of thing. Fanfiction.net used to be the thing, but it's very much gone.
Cool.
Well, it's never really been up there, but it's continued to go downhill. But a lot of that with fanfic, it's always just published on the internet. Sometimes, I think back in before the internet days, it was published in magazines. Things I have found out this week. But it's basically published online, whether it's posted on somebody's personal Tumblr, on a fandom Tumblr, on somewhere on the internet for other people to read and enjoy. And that is the goal.
That's awesome.
Well, I'm curious about, there's some theory that being anonymous is one of the attractions of fan fiction. Are you truly anonymous, or is it something that you actually do like to claim?
So there are anonymous stick writers, and there are some of them use the handle anonymous, particularly on places where they can publish without having any username attached to it. LiveJournal, you see a lot of anon bills, usually on places where people are posting prompts. Some sometimes on AO3, occasionally on Phantom Tumblrs, but a lot of people have used the same username, and they very much own their fan fiction. They have it, it's theirs, they claim it, they're known for it. I'm one of them. I enjoy being like, yes, this is the thing that I have created.
Huh?
Enjoy it with me.
There's also a theory that, well, I mean, just writing in general, but perhaps especially fan fiction gives you an opportunity to do some identity exploration, and to perhaps write about concerns, issues, and make it public. What do you think? What do you think it's perhaps some motivations that aren't as obvious to you, but you've reflected on?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of like working through identities, and also, like seeing something and it's like, I don't like how that ended. I'm gonna write it a different way. Or this sucks in terms of representation of minorities. I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to write this thing. But yeah, and there were a lot of people who write what they. I've seen several fanfics where they write when they're like people were having like horrible days, and they will just sort of write what they wish, give these characters what they wish they could have. So there's no end to the motivations, really.
Do you think, is it primarily a teen phenomenon, or do you think there are older fan fiction writers?
There are definitely older fan fiction writers. I know a couple grad student fanfic writers. I know at least one person who was definitely in their 40s, if not pushing 50 at this point. Yeah. There are a lot of teenagers writing it. It's very accessible. It's very easy to do, and to have the community. And we're usually the ones who are deeply entrenched in fandom at this point in our lives. But it is, while there is a lot of teenagers in fandom writing fanfic, doing fan art, there are a lot of older college kids, people with jobs. I've got
Imagine that.
Yeah. We might get you in on it, Chris.
Well, I could be inspired. I certainly am inspired every other Thursday when I meet with you. Okay, I'm hopefully bringing in Laia. Anybody else have a question while I'm bringing in Laia?
Yeah, I do. You said before that, you talked about why writing fanfic has such an appeal, but why do you think reading fanfiction has such an appeal?
Some of it is escapism. And part of it is like, there's so many reasons people could read fan fiction. I read a lot of it because I am a queer and trans teenager, and there's not a lot of books out there that cover that. And like, I have a mental illness, and you don't see a lot of that well handled in this. But it's also just like, this is fun. And a lot of it is actually really well written, and some of it is more well written than the books I have read that got published. It's just like, it's a fun way. It's also just a fun way to be part of the fandom and just like exploring things of how things are being read and how things were written, or if they could have been written, or sometimes it's just like, has someone taken these characters and put them in a coffee shop alternate universe yet? No? Someone should do that. Yes? I'm going to read that. So...
Great.
Yeah, I love this creativity, inventiveness. It actually is owning the characters, the stories, and feeling the freedom, the courage to make. It's no longer the author is ruler almighty, you know?
Oh no, the author can have their fun, but we're gonna get our fun too, and we're gonna it's like I've seen so much great stuff, and it's people just having so much fun, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
And it brings people together, in fandoms and in other places. Like I've started watching television shows and movies because I read fanfic, and it's like, well, I've read it, I should watch it. So.
Uh-huh. Well, you know, in the study of literature, we talk about reader response, and that your response to your book is your own, okay? And which is totally against the whole idea that the authoritarian author, you know, and the teacher who says, "What did the author mean by this? What do you think the author?" You know, the new criticism thing. And I think Louise Rosenblatt, who we've talked about, originated this whole reader response idea, the whole freedom, would be thrilled with fan fiction. That you have that kind of agency, you know, to take these characters and do with what you would. Oh, okay. Laya says she's got a problem, but she knows how to fix it. Okay, she's still trying.
We can fix it.
Laya, well, I started to say, we can do it next week if we don't get to you this week. Yeah, not a big deal. She can come another time. Anybody else have another question before I go through mine? I'm very curious, Sadie. What are you thinking?
In fact, I don't know anything about fan fiction, and when I saw the word this morning, and I talked a little with some of my students, and they like Chinese fan fiction books, but I don't know anything about English fan fiction books. I have never thought about being a writer. Never. It's a really interesting topic for me.
Mm-hmm. It is the ultimate compliment, I think, to a writer to want to write fan fiction about their stuff. Yeah. Well, now you knew the teacher questions were coming, Oliver. Okay. So, is there any way? First of all, have you ever had a teacher try anything, creative? You know how sometimes we teachers get creative and we try new things, and sometimes they're always well intended, but sometimes maybe not as great. Have you ever had a teacher try anything with fan fiction in the classroom, or must it be outside the classroom, lest it be colonized and, I don't know, contaminated in some way?
I have thought about that, but it's really impossible. I have thought about, organize kind of English corner after class. So because, students usually have like 12 or 15 periods of class every day, I have thought about organize English corner in my, being a homeroom teacher in my homeroom class. But it really takes time. I have encouraged some students like to write something, about, even it's not real, like fiction things. But like for English language learners, English as a second language learner, they even are not good at, grammars and, English vocabulary. So that would be one of my concerns, What if like writing novels or writing nonfiction things, how to say, it's like it couldn't be on the curriculum. I don't know whether I make myself clear. It's like for English as a second language learners, it really takes time for students to create something, even for our teachers to create a kind of community to encourage students to write.
That makes a lot of sense. It does take time. I think I had mentioned that at one point in Eci521, I actually had a graduate student, who actually did a project with a student from Taiwan who was very new to this country, and he was reading young adult literature, and so she was fascinated to learn what he was learning through his reading of young adult literature, and he was learning about the culture as well as developing his language skills. So I could see that, you know, there's the potential to take that motivation that would come with writing fan fiction and use it. But, you know, there's always that other side that we teachers in general can make it into an assignment, can make it, colonize it, so to speak. So it's no longer something that's out there in real world, but it's in school and it's boring and it's dulling. Would you like to see teachers try to use fan fiction in classrooms, Oliver?
I think the main reason people write fan fiction is because it's fun. I would be concerned seeing it in the classroom, because that could get messy, I think. Yes, school can be fun, but although granted, other than my couple semesters of college, I've never been to a real school, so I have no idea what your thing is, but yeah, I also feel like that would, I feel like definitely fiction writing has a place in the classroom. I'm not sure if fan fiction does. Like, it does not yet. Like, that may change in 15 years as we change, but I think right now fanfic doesn't necessarily really belong in a classroom setting.
So, can I talk about that for a minute?
I could see you smiling.
Yeah, so my students read the book Peak by Roland Smith in November this year, and one project that I had them do is I had them use the website Weebly, and then they blogged, but they didn't blog from their perspectives. They had to choose a character and then blog throughout the reading process from that character's perspective, and they definitely had leeway. They had to, you know, like incorporate some quotes from the book to kind of stay true to that character, which I guess isn't really necessarily the spirit of fanfic, because you can kind of go off on your own with it, but they also got to kind of develop the character on their own. And so I didn't even think about calling it fan fiction, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of fan fiction.
Yeah, I remember having a curriculum one year where it was very similar. You write something from the point of view of this character in the book, and I wouldn't have... It's funny, I would not have called that fan fiction, but it kind of does get to some of the things that are in fan fiction. So...
Well, so maybe, I suspect in some way good teachers have been doing a form of fan fiction without calling it and realizing it was fan fiction for years. I'd love, you know, somebody should write a story about a teacher who actually created fan fiction, and then who knows, and then it evolved from there. I did do a poll in our Eva Perry, already famous Eva Perry Mock Prince Club, and there were 7 of 13 students who do fan fiction. And I remember Reed said, but I didn't know I was doing it, you know. And then I did a poll last night in our soon-to-be famous, after our debut, a Quail Ridge Books Teens Writers Club, and there were 6 of the 8, which makes sense. They're writers who write fan fiction.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Laia is with me in Google Chat, but I'm going to tell her that we will let her come visit another week, since she's getting older and older as she collects accounts here. So let's just say, Laia, how about we try another week? Oh.
You have the spotlight all to herself.
Yeah, that's right, Oliver says. Well, Oliver, you can be thinking about, for your parting words of advice to a graduate class of teachers, how should they go about teaching literacy? And you might even tell us, because that's our next exploration, what do you think literacy is and what do you think literature is?
Wow. Thanks. I just finished an AP Lit class. I should know the answers to these things. But, like, literacy is just... Thank you for asking difficult questions.
How about that?
Like, my initial response is literacy is, you know, it's reading. It's, but...
That's cool.
Yeah.
Go for the... Now, it's tougher. What is literature? What is literature?
Literature, I've been taught that there are two forms of literature. There is commercial literature, and there is some other kind of literature, and it's like, you know, the stuff that we read. Commercial literature is stuff that's written mostly for commercial use. It's, you know, it's for fun. It's going to have some themes and some messages, but it's not going to be like the deep thematic things of like Jane Eyre or Crime and Punishment. I think there are two kinds of literature, but literature in general is just, it's books, it's storytelling, it's words written down on a page. And that incorporates everything from plays to books to poetry. It's just a matter of commercial or whatever the other kind of literature was.
Uh-huh. Now, do you anticipate making a career that includes literature in a big way?
I would like to. I would like to, if nothing else, continue to make poetry a thing in my life that I can do and publish. And yeah.
And
Maybe space queers. That's my goal.
Okay, well, we can tell more about that, but let me say publish and perform. Would you like to give a pitch for our debut?
Yeah. I'm part and Chris facilitates, and we're lucky enough to have her. I'm part of a group of teenagers who sit in a circle on the floor in the back room of an independent bookstore every other Wednesday night. We initially started until we were there from 7 to 8, and now we're there from 7 till whenever they kick us out, which is usually 9, but we have been a group for many years. They were there before I joined 5 years ago, and we've decided that now is the time for us to have an actual performance. So we are debuting in 2 weeks, which is terrifying. But we are performing in 2 weeks, and there will be 9 of us reading. I counted this morning. Doing everything from slam poetry to prose, and it will be Friday the 13th.
I hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, people have been looking at me funny. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's Friday the 13th. I'm like, this would explain some of the things that have gone on. Have we settled on Reddit call, or is that still up in the air?
Well, it's still up in the air.
Okay. So either be at Riddick Hall on NC State campus, or we'll be at Quail Ridge Books and Music. We'll figure that out eventually.
We'll let you know for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
But it will be a 2-hour show, possibly with a Q&A at the end. And it will just be a bunch of teenagers getting on stage, and owning their stories and telling their stories and telling reading what they have written and just like owning their existence, and it's going to be awesome.
It will be awesome. And I have to say, Oliver is just such a compelling, outstanding spoken word artist. And so definitely. And also great at organizing because she's pulling this whole thing together.
I have discovered that I enjoy organizing things.
Isn't that something? You're good at it.
And just like, yes, yeah, I'm clinging hard to the Lord of all things title right now. That is my title, and I'm keeping it.
You're doing a great job of it. Well, let me finish. Let me give you a send-off with another quote from Maya Angelou. She said, "To be left alone on the tightrope of youthful unknowing is to experience the excruciating beauty of full freedom and the threat of eternal indecision. Few, if any, survive their teens. Most surrender to the vague but murderous pressure of adult conformity. It becomes easier to die and avoid conflict than to maintain a constant battle with the superior forces of maturity." May you win that battle. You will, Oliver, win that battle. And you know what? You will live forever. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Well, too cool. Well, I'm going to let everybody take just a little break, all right? And come right back, and we will go into the second half of our three-half program.
Nice to meet you, Oliver.
Nice to meet you, too.
Good luck.
Yes. I think that was a fascinating discussion. I really do appreciate it, Oliver.
Anytime.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Put this on your Vita. It's the 13th. I had not made the connection. It was a Friday. Isn't that funny? I've written Friday the 13th so many times, but I hadn't made the bad luck connection before.
It explains a couple of things. Just a little bit. But
Got that on your calendar, Bill? Bill's videotaping for us.
awesome. We appreciate you coming so much.
Especially spoken word artists love that.
Yeah. We appreciate it anyway. And we might buy you a non-alcoholic drink. We might have those.
All right, chocolate bar. I happen to know he loves chocolate bars.
Excellent. Someone will find chocolate.
Milk chocolate. Well, we're talking about literacy and literature and all that exciting stuff next, Oliver, so it's sort of downhill from... No, I'm kidding. For the rest of the class. Okay, we're back. You going to hang with us, Oliver?
If you guys don't mind, I'd like to.
Oh, well, cool. Let's do that. All right. Well, let me show you the plan for tonight, everybody. Okay. And this was the quote that I shared. This was Oliver and Laya from our Mock Prince Club.
That was a good night.
It was, which you guys have hopefully watched, and Oliver was a co-host, and it went smoother than ever. So the first half was our interview with our guest experts, and again, we'll bring Laya in again because she was so excited. Second half is we're going to complete this literacies-based teaching of literature, collaborative critical inquiry. And it's basically modeling for you this pedagogical pattern that we'll be using for the rest of the semester. And if at any time, what I tried to do was take into consideration what we learned last time. If we're working off a website, it is awfully hard to see, especially if you've got a small screen. I've got a screen this big, and I've got, 20 windows open. But if you've got a small screen, it is hard to see a website through my window, okay? So all the links are on the archive site. If you go on our website, our wiki, and go to archives and then the week 2 hangout, the links are there, so you can always find where we're going, okay? And there's someone knocking at my door, but I'm busy having class. So then we'll be talking in our book clubs. Yay, which some of the books, I should switch that so Oliver could tell us firsthand about some of the books they read. But
Can I talk about the Death Toll book?
Do what now?
Can I talk about the Death Toll book and how not to write books?
There is something about shaming books that is very, very popular in our class. In fact, we just had a group create the book shame Tumblr.
Oh,
Seriously. And they're getting, I think there's like 10, any book that we throw and literally throw into the shared shame goes on the site, which is anonymous. So I'm not telling you who is doing this, but they're getting very creative with it. So there's just something really great about dissing books that for whatever reason you find inadequate, I think. Okay. Well, so I was looking at a advertisement for a middle school librarian recently, okay? And a couple of things really stood out to me. First of all, that they were asking for someone who demonstrates competence in instruction, technology, and collaborative units. And this isn't just for librarians to coordinate this. It's the idea of working together to create these units. And so that was inspiring because I thought we're definitely in the right direction. And it also called for someone who would have enthusiasm and experience for creating a positive literacy-based learning environment. And that's one of our key, I think, concepts is how do you create a literacy-based learning environment. And to do that, to explore what that might be, we're using a process that is big on critical thinking, okay? And the process is what I'm calling a collaborative critical inquiry. And there's essentially 3 parts to it, but you always begin with a compelling question, all right? And so in our case, it's what might a literacy-based teaching of literature look like? And if you unpack that bigger, compelling question, you have what I'm calling scaffolding questions, okay? Which might be, what is literacy? What we've already asked Oliver. What is literacy? What is literature? What is going on in the outside world that we need to consider, okay, as we teach? What might be the balance properly of virtual and actual as we create this literacies-based classroom, okay? And so you create these scaffolding questions, and then you develop a or before you get together. And I just got this thing that you have to I know people do forums asynchronously. I think you have to have a real-time getting together, be it Google Hangout, or we used to do Second Life, or on campus, in school. There needs to be a coming together. That's what I'm calling the during. Okay, during the collaborative critical inquiry. The pre is when you prepare for it. Like some of you are very busy preparing for the pre part, so you would be ready for the during, for the discussion here. The pre, the during, and the post, in which you reflect on what you've learned through this collaborative critical inquiry. all should have some sort of collaboration, some social mediation, so you're learning as a community, okay? One learning with and from others, and when possible, to include some digital technology too. And that's why I chose VoiceThread. When you create your own collaborative critical inquiry, you can use whatever you'd like. But I wanted to follow up with the VoiceThread so people would have a second opportunity to use that. Now, interwoven in this process is using Brookfield's critical thinking process. And that's essentially, I don't know, different people have different approaches to teaching critical thinking. Brookfield is sort of the NC State official one. He was great. We read his book. He came to campus last year. We spent a whole day with him. I have not been so impressed by a scholar in so long. He's a scholar, but he also loves to create strategies, which is someone after my own heart, to create activities, experiences where people can work together to create new knowledge, to teach each other. And that's what Brookfield is so amazing at. Okay, and he's got lots and lots of activities on his website, as well as there's plenty of copies of his book in the library. So his basic approach is you identify your assumptions, then you check out the accuracy and validity of those assumptions. And I put a little eyeball there because that stands for one of the best ways to do that is to look at those assumptions through new eyes, through multiple perspectives. Okay? And then the final step is to take informed action. He would say you do your best critical thinking when you work through the process and do something. Do something with, think and do. Do something with what you've come up with. So we're going to work through the process here. The pre-part included thinking about a book club experience that you'd learned from, okay? Oliver has many. I remember learning about, you want to tell us, Jill, about yours and Gathering Blue?
Yes. Unmuted my mic. Yeah, I can't believe it, but I wasn't really in any book clubs in middle school or high school, and the first book club that I was in my college literacy class. Actually, it was teaching literacy, and I loved the personal choice that the teacher gave to us. She let us choose our books, and instead of giving us like lit circle jobs where we had to find vocabulary or come up with discussion questions, we could create something, and it just really kind of freed me up to explore the book through my eyes, and I didn't have to worry about finding the right answer or getting a certain amount of things written down in time, and I just got so much more out of the book than I would have if there was a prescribed task that I had to do. So I love that.
That was a great experience for you. Thanks to that professor. Okay, and then the second activity, well, basically for this collaborative critical inquiry, you had a scholarly article to read, evidence-based research by Gordon Wells, which I think in terms of looking at the social context of language and literacy development, it's really a fascinating piece. I would ask for any immediate comments you'd like to make, but then as you actually work through this critical thinking process, you can pull from that article for evidence-based reasons, okay? Any comments right off about Gordon Wells? Had you read him before?
No.
I think, I saw Jill and Bethany talking, and you both graciously stepped back, but.
Oh, I just said that I haven't read anything by him before.
Okay.
Yeah, I just said no.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. He's new to you.
Some initial reactions that I had, a lot of it sounded familiar. He talked a lot about Piaget and Vygotsky, and seemed to be a really big fan of Vygotsky, and just about it just seemed to really emphasize collaboration and the need for a purpose in everything that you're teaching. We're not here to teach the what. We're not here to teach a subject. We're here to teach a process, and we're here to teach students how to think, not what to think. And that just really stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. That's great. And he had John Dewey in there too with the power of reflection. So what more could you ask for? And then I also shared, and again, this was my thinking as I was creating this collaborative critical inquiry. I also shared just a brief 8-minute video from Bonnie Stewart in which she was talking about new literacies and the literacies of filtering information and of curating information and from learning with each other. So many to many kind of literacies that everybody needs these days to be a 21st century learner. Then we watched just a brief discussion of fan fiction from the Eva Perry group, okay, to give you an idea and introduce you to Oliver and Laya too. And you can see how passionate Laya was about fangirls. And then we finished up with questions that we might have for our guest experts. So that was both to set the stage, to give you some scholarly research to build on, and also to tie in the pop culture and the fan fiction connection. Okay? So that was and then we finished our pre-part with our interview of Oliver. So the next step is what I'm going to use a discussion web, which is a reading and content area activity. It was developed by Donna Alverman back in 1991. And you come up with this compelling question. It has to be a yes or no because you're basically going to examine your assumptions on both sides. Okay? So you will try to think of at least 3 reasons, okay, why you would say yes, and provide evidence if you can, perhaps from your reading, perhaps from your viewing. And then you would do the no. And then you would reach conclusion yourself. And this reminds me a lot when I was in school at East Carolina years ago, had a political science professor. It was very, very exciting. There was an election coming up. And we were rating Time and Newsweek and all the popular, everything, mass media. We were learning everything we could and all of these issues, and it was fascinating. And for the first half of the exam, the final, we had to choose pro or con on issues and make our case. And I was wrung out at the end of that, hour and a half. And then we came back and he said, now take the other side. And your grade depends on how well you defend both. And it was the most demanding exam I'd ever had. So talk about examining our assumptions. So our question, and you will work through this, each of you individually first, okay? Our question for tonight that hopefully will pull together these scaffolding questions and the compelling questions to help you sort of look at it with a different lens is, has technology made it more difficult to teach traditional or alphabetic literacy and literature? Has it made it more difficult? Either yes or no. I'm going to give you, we'll see if it takes 5 minutes. We'll start with 3 minutes, but quickly write down for both sides and then draw your conclusion, which is the stronger side for you. Okay? Go for it. Okay, that was 3 minutes, and I see people thinking very hard. Do you need more time?
That's enough time.
Okay, cool, cool. Now, there's a function, an app actually called the Unhangout, where I could create separate rooms, and 2 of you could go to one room and compare, and 2 of us could stay here. I don't know if I'm feeling brave enough to try that. I don't want to lose anybody. But definitely with a larger class, the next step and the power of this process is that you then take your conclusion and present it to someone else, and the 2 of you try to reach consensus. Okay? And once the couple, the pair of you, reach consensus, if you absolutely can't, you always acknowledge the outliers, okay, why you're not getting there. But after you hopefully reach consensus, you would join with another couple. And so there would be a quad, or there would be 4 people making this decision. I have done this with a group up to 60. And it's fascinating when you get to the end, and I would actually go through, I mean, we would get as far up as like 8 people to a group is probably about the max, okay? But when the 8 groups would report out, it was fascinating to see the similarities as well as the outliers as they work toward consensus. So I'm sorry we're not going to get the full effect, but I think you can see how this process would work. And the more people involved, the richer it gets, okay? So let's, I think the easiest way to do this is, let me see a show of hands for how many of you concluded yes. Technology is more difficult. I got one.
There's a amount of evidence for both. I know we had to necessarily come up with one.
Oh, you do. Real quick, make your conclusion.
Yeah, I'm sticking with yes.
Okay. So, and I think I saw a vote, okay, from Sadie. I can't quite see your hands, Jill.
Oh, I said no.
Oh, okay. Oh, this is good. It makes it much more interesting when you have some disagreement. Okay? So, let's start with the naysayer. Why? I don't know. I think it'd be more interesting to start with the 2 who agree. Okay, you 2 who agree. Tell us what your reasons and any evidence-based explanations you have. Share with us. Convince us.
Well, I don't know all the data, but I kind of based it on the fact that kids are reading less traditional literacies like books, and it's much more like social media, text speak, and so it changes the way that they understand and perceive language, or the way that they feel like it is really practical. So I feel like a lot less students are reading or engaging in that type of literacy. Though I'm not a technology hater, just to be clear. I feel like it has, in some ways, hindered that side of literacy.
How about you, Sadie?
For me, I think how to say, like, Chinese language Mandarins pay more attention on like the handwriting and also reading the the paper materials. So it's not that easy. And another reason is that it is not that possible to get the technology access in most of the schools to teach traditional reading and writing.
Okay, so there's still a digital divide there. Inequity.
Yeah.
Okay, any other reasons?
I said, well, so I had some reasons on that side too.
Sure.
So just kind of going along with what Bethany said, maybe the quality of writing is not as high because anyone can publish. or at least like that would be a thought that some people would have. I don't necessarily agree with it, but there's not really like the checks and balances system that would be in place with traditional print and editors.
Maybe I'll call it vetting.
Yeah.
The vetting that's being done, just because I'm running out of space. Okay. Anybody else got a strong reason they'd like to see up there for, yeah, it's more difficult to teach these days. It's more difficult to teach the traditional literacy because of technology.
I think that technology causes a like entertainment-based kind of focus, so kids are used to being like multimedia entertainment kind of focus, and so like strapping down and trying to only use like a print media is really, it's difficult for a lot of kids who have been playing with iPads since they were, 3. So I feel like it affects just the way that they focus or what they are used to like engaging with.
Okay, so it's sort of like attention is more difficult to maintain.
Yeah. Not to be ADD, but yeah, kind of.
Okay. And anything else? I'm going to stick it right there. But okay. Well, let's turn the tables. Let me start with the two naysayers first and see, did you have any reasons, Sadie and Bethany, that technology is not more difficult? It's not making it more difficult to teach traditional? Because you're supposed to get on that side too.
Sure. Based on what Jill said, I kind of had comments too about the idea that because everyone is publishing, kids have to do more critical thinking, which is the positive thing because of just the bombardment of text online and all of that jazz.
Okay.
And also technology help to get more access to the reading materials.
Okay. That's right. With open resources these days, there's even access to more and more books online. How about that? Okay, Jill, take it away.
Okay, so there's word processing, which is extremely important, and it helps in the revision process. And then you have tools that allow for collaboration, like Google Docs, where multiple students can collaborate on the same document at a time. You get way more feedback, and it kind of allows for globalization, too. I mean, you could even get feedback from students across the world if you wanted to. Let's see here. And then also, I think it's really important that technology allows you to write for a purpose. If you're going to publish something that you write online, and if it's something that other people are going to see, then I think you would care a lot more about it. Oh shoot. Oh yeah, and then it allows you to express yourself on with multiple mediums, which I guess kind of strays away from the traditional literature question, but
I'll say multimedia, multimodal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like we're actually agreeing on a lot here, you guys.
Yeah.
Could it be that if we unpacked what we meant by literacy beyond this traditional alphabetic literacy, that maybe that would help us a bit more?
Yeah.
So, what kind of literacies, okay, I'm going to make it plural, do you think technology is introducing?
Visual, like icons.
That's where the multimodal, usually when we talk about modal different ways, okay, and there are different symbiotic modes, both the textual as well as the visual or image-wise, as well as auditorily or orally, as well as gestures. It goes on, but different ways we communicate. So that's what I mean by multimodal. Do you think that certain kids actually benefit a lot more using technology to learn traditional literacy?
I think it can cater to multiple learning styles, whereas a traditional literacy may not as much. I tend to err on the side of balance because I think a lot of times it's like, oh, technology, this is the thing that we need to do now. But I think that there has to be that value in like the written word, and then the new ways that it's being represented are just as important for kids who don't learn just by visual or whatever. But yeah, I definitely think it can be helpful for different styles of learning.
Okay. I'm good. This is not something we're going to solve or come to a final conclusion here, obviously. But I will throw out, too, literature. Oh, now, Oliver, you said something about, you sort of saw where we were going with the what is literacy thing. What did you want to add?
For me, I feel like literacy is like being confident in something. It's kind of where I go, like, we have literacy in technology, and we have literacy in being able to read literature and being able to critically understand, have critical thinking, and to critically understand, to sort of come to a better understanding of what like the author might have been going for, or what we can get from this piece. And then literacy and like body language, and just like having a greater understanding of not just like understanding and ability to, in some cases, the ability to use something.
I think you've hit on it. These days we talk about new literacies beyond the traditional literacy, and literacy does mean to be competent at something, okay, to have mastered something. And so that's a challenge for us to, as we go through the 3 quick weeks coming up, think about what kind of literacies we need to be teaching. I do have some resources. You'll see the multimodal literacies position paper from the National Council of Teachers of English. That should be enlightening. Also, what is literature? Anybody want to make a quick stab?
Words on paper. I think that Oliver said that.
I said anything that can be read, viewed, or interpreted and given meaning.
So you're expanding on that.
Mm-hmm. So I said numbers, too. I think numbers can be considered literature.
Hey, Early would think that.
Yeah. You would.
Well, what if I tell you that this is something for you to, we'll leave this collaborative critical inquiry thinking about, too, that the National Council of Teachers of English says that literature is any text that helps us become more literate.
Okay, don't define something with the word.
How's that for circular logic? But it's something for us to think about, okay? What is literacy? What is literature? Or what is this whole technology? And what is achieving this balance, okay? And how does all this collaboration fit in, okay? We are going to let's consider that a wrap on this part. Any questions? We need to decide what topic you guys are going to do next week. And who's going to be the point person. Essentially, you're going to go through the process I went through, okay? Whatever the topic is, come up with a question, compelling questions, some scaffolding questions. People volunteer, I'll volunteer to take whatever question, scaffolding question, and find some resource that would help us question that, think more, examine our assumptions about it. Does that make sense? There were 2 big ideas that everybody seemed to be really interested in: the technology question, so technology and the teaching of literacy, and the other one was diversity in terms of cultural diversity, multicultural, and that's beyond geographic and racial, and thinking about, it's also thinking about what culture is, and within our culture, what literature should be represented. And that's going to bring in the part about censoring and book banning even. Okay, so that's a fascinating topic too. And we can do both of those, but choose one you want to do next week, okay? And who would like to lead it? Oliver is exempt.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to come in and sit on this, but
I'll lead it, and I'm interested in both topics. So, what do you guys want to do?
I'm super open to you. I think I would maybe slant more towards the technology one. So if you want to, but really I'm flexible. Whatever you want to do is fine.
So, do you want to do the technology one next week?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay. As in, like, the week after, so you can lead that one since you're interested in it?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you want to lead the technology one since you're interested in it?
Next week or the week after or whatever.
Week after? Okay, and I can do the diversity one. And I would love help finding resources, Chris.
Oh, definitely. What I would recommend you do is create a Google Docs.
Okay.
And everybody can add, like, scaffolding questions, and whatever schedule works best for you. I tried to have everything ready on Monday and, ask you to respond before class. Just so, if you guys get it ready the day before and respond the day before, the pre-part, that's cool. Whatever schedule works for you.
Yeah, I know I try to do as much as I can over the weekend because just with teaching during the week, it's pretty busy. So I could probably try to get some stuff up on Saturday and then just maybe hopefully have stuff ready by Sunday or Monday, so we could all work on it.
Yeah, that's up to you guys.
A little bit earlier. Would that be okay with you guys?
Oh, that's fine.
Saturday works good for me. Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay. Well, cool. We got a plan. And again, I'll take part 2, so include me in your Google Doc.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the last thing, because we are going to take a few minutes to talk about books, is that on the I have adjusted the schedule, so you'll see that essentially for this week coming up, that you will have your second book response due on Sunday night, as well as do your first critical reflection. Just do one and reflect on what we've done so far, okay? And you will see in your Gmail that I sent you a private reporting form where you just go to and check off everything you've done. And if you have any questions, I'll give feedback, and that's private between the two of us. Okay? If you have any questions, just let me know. And we could also do conferencing, video conferencing if you'd like. All right. I want to quickly talk about literary quality and the books we're reading. You know what? I have Oliver right here. Oliver, tell us about, we don't just say these books win because we like them, right?
No, we have people who try to give
Exactly.
That's why we should let these books win. But no, we have a specific set of criteria, and we have an actual grading system of yes, good, and no. And the books that we like but don't meet the qualities of having story setting, theme, meeting sort of the high standards that the Prince Award requires, those get shoved in the good, because they're not going to win the Prince Award. They're not Prince-worthy. We like them. They're great. They just don't meet the high literary standards. But because you have to have some sort of standard, otherwise it's just people going, I liked this book. Okay.
And I have to tell you, so far on the book shame, I think people are, there's not a high level of critical thinking going on there because people are having fun with it. But
I feel like there's a space in the book shaming where we could have a lot of critical thinking, because you can hate a book but recognize that it meets a high literary standard. You just dislike it, which is the way I am with Dickens.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to read Charles Dickens.
I hate him too.
He's the worst.
okay, we understand. A lot of people are about Moby Dick like that. I understand. Okay. So we do talk about literary quality, and the way the official prints works is that they will tell you what literary quality isn't, okay? But it's harder to explain what it is. But when they talk about books, they do talk about these elements of literary style, and that books can be holistically evaluated. They can be stronger than it's not like a checklist. It's not like you get points for each. It's more holistic, and a book may be incredibly strong on theme, like Maggot Moon, or it may be may have really strong characters. The Prince Committee, too, you have to realize, is not worried about controversy. In fact, they like controversy. Okay? Mm-hmm. And they like books that push the envelope and evolve the whole category of young adult literature. Okay? So they're looking for the books that are out there, too, the authors who are leading us to new frontiers in literature. And I do wish that there were representatives of young adults, of teens on the committee. I'm thinking Oliver would say yes, too.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's great. Like, obviously, adults, I guess I kind of count as one now. But like having representatives and people that these books are written to and for, and having that specific audience actually being represented would be awesome.
I think so too. So, you know what? Maybe as a action item from our literacies-based literature classroom, we could come up with a petition to have a student representatives on the official Prince Committee. I've always wanted to do that.
This is your excuse.
Yeah, this is a good time to do it, perhaps. Well, let's talk about what book do you most want to talk about? We only have a few minutes, but what book would you most like to talk about, guys?
Maggot Moon.
Maggot Moon. Too bad, Oliver. I don't think you've read that one.
I don't think I have. I think I can't even remember if I know I've heard a lot about it, but that has not been a book that I've read. Should I read it?
What have you heard?
Just vague Prince mumblings. I can't remember if that was the year I joined or the year before it.
Oh, it was this year.
Oh, okay. I know I've heard stuff about it. I can't tell you what, because I can't remember if this is the book with the illustrations in it or not.
It does have illustrations.
The illustrations where it's like the rats eating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen those. That's about it.
Okay. I remember in my notes, and I take prolific notes at every club meeting, but people thought it was young. This is like the worst criticism they can give for a book, that it's not for them, it's for younger, it's Newbery-ish.
No. No, not at all. I think it's way too intense for that.
It's way too intense. I would never recommend it to my 6th graders.
But like I thought it was young. Like I never was picturing the speaker as like 15. I kept forgetting he was that old. I think it was just like, I don't know, maybe the way that because of his like dyslexia and whatever, like he just portrayed him. I felt like his voice was young, but I don't think the story content at all is young.
No, agreed.
They, Navigating Early and Maggot Moon were both young books.
I totally agree with Navigating Early, and I would agree that would be the younger spectrum. I actually want to read that with my 6th graders next year. But Maggot Moon, just content-wise, is not young at all. And that really shows you that you can't go by like reading level or lexile or however it's labeled, because a book can have so much meaning. And, like you said before, the themes in it can be so adult that the writing style, that was actually a really cool paradox. The writing style was really simple. Well, I guess I wouldn't call it simple. You had simple sentences and shorter sentences because of his dyslexia, but such a heavy topic. That was just a really interesting combination.
I think so, too. would you think The Giver? How would you? What grade level? And I'm guessing. I know you read it in college, Bethany, and I'm sure Jill has an idea. Oliver, when did you read The Giver?
I read The Giver, I was probably 11 to 12. Probably. That's probably the latest I read it. I might have reread it when I was 13, but yeah, somewhere between the ages of 11 and 13 is when I read that book.
I feel like that's a good time.
Yeah.
And that's basically when it's taught. Most teachers I know teach it in 6th grade. Do you think that's appropriate? And do you think this book is a lot darker, or do you see any any comparison?
I think it's a little darker.
Mm-hmm.
Jillian, what do you think?
I think it's darker too. I mean, it's been a while since I've read The Giver, but I think that I don't know, Magnet Moon is just definitely a lot darker, just with the amount of violence that it describes. And I wrote about the illustrations on my blog entry, but the illustrations of, you know, the rat coming in and slowly like making its presence known, drinking the poison, dying. Like, do you guys care if I go along with the illustrations? It doesn't really have to do with the rest of the plot. Is it okay if I say what? So the rat dies, a fly comes and lays like eggs in its mouth, and it just gets more and more full. And this happens every couple of pages that you see it over time while you're reading about the horrible things that are happening in the society and to the characters. And eventually the eggs disappear and the rat's belly starts to get bigger and bigger. And then suddenly, you know, in like the climax of the story, the rat's belly explodes and there's maggots everywhere. And then the maggots get bigger and bigger and bigger. And you see one maggot turning into a fly. And it just kind of shows you, like, is this going to start all over again? Like, is this despair never going to end? And early on in the book, a teacher kills a student. And that happens pretty early on. But it was just, I don't know. I think it's because I sat down and I just read the whole thing at once that I just, like, had such a pit in my stomach that I couldn't let go. And I didn't want to appreciate the book. I was just really mad and really upset, and I don't know. So in retrospect, I think it's really brilliantly written, and like the whole fact that he has dyslexia and it's written in kind of like the chunked up way it is really, I mean, the literary quality is great. I just couldn't get over the content.
I just read on ebook and I didn't have any of the illustrations, so I completely missed that whole rat.
Oh no. Wait, the ebook?
Yeah, I don't think
know.
Oh, that's just wrong.
Okay, that goes in the yes column, because that just totally, see, that's why you liked it, because you didn't.
Yes. I mean, it's so much better.
Oh, I'm just serious. It didn't have the impact.
No, not at all.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I'll have to find like an actual copy.
Yeah, here, I can show you.
Because it's definitely a multimodal experience.
Yeah.
I thought it was like from the cover, because she has the drawings I saw on the front and the back, but then I didn't see it in there. Yep, no, ew.
Seriously, probably the grossest picture in the book, but there you go.
It's not like an eat and read kind of book.
No.
Ooh, so this wouldn't be a middle school book?
No.
I think maybe 9th grade.
Do you know, there are people who would say the same thing about The Giver. There are many people who say The Giver is taught much too young. The Giver is more sanitized, you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. It's much more vague. Like, there's not a lot of like graphic description. Like Magnet Moon is very graphic, I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, The Giver has been banned because there's the euthanasia of babies, but many young people read right over that and never figure out what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
I like this book because, I mean, it is in your face.
Yeah.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty at all. Do you know?
I think it's sort of
Go ahead.
Like, because it's so short and each chapter is so abrupt, so like I think, like Jillian was saying, if you read it all in one sitting, it's just so heavy because it's condensed, But
And it's not just reading the words. You actually have to figure out what's going on because you're getting everything through Standish's viewpoint, which is kind of a little jumbled up, and he's figuring it out as you're going. And sometimes, like, you have to figure things out before he does, or you have to interpret his words to figure out what's really happening.
Yeah. I definitely reread sections to make sure I didn't miss anything because of that as well.
Yeah.
Because you have to wonder if he's a reliable narrator.
Oh, definitely.
Well, with his imagination back and forth, what's true, what's not, kind of thing.
Now, Sadie, you had an interesting perspective on this book. What do you think? And I know you've not read it, but even in thinking about reading it.
I just got the book, The Giver, this afternoon, but I haven't read it. But, as you all discussed about that one, and it sounds very interesting, that one, I'm sure I'm going to read that book. But, talking about whether students could read that, such as, the one that Jill read this week, it sounds...
Navigating Early.
Yeah, it sounds horrible. So I, and also the book, The Scent, and... no, which one you asked me in the email, I think?
Oh, Saints and Boxers.
Yeah, Scent and Boxers. It talks about political and historical things happen in very early China. I like to read this kind of books. There are a lot of histories and also politic things in it, but it's too sensitive for. I don't want my students to be very aggressive on their opinions or ideas.
And I know that's. What would you think of Maggot Moon? Would that be too sensitive in some way, or?
I have no idea about Nazi, but I am personally interested in that. I don't know. Some people talk about the relationship between Nazi and China. I don't know. I don't know that much about the the history things of the part, but I'm very interested in that.
Oh, we could certainly continue the discussion, and I'm sure we will revisit Maggot Moon again. I have to tell you, when I remember bringing a group of students to a conference, and we actually met Lois Lowry, and their first question, we video conferenced with her after that too, much like this, but their first question was, did he live or die at the end? Did he live, And what do you guys think? Well, I mean, now if you've read the rest of his books, but at the time, what did you think?
He lives.
Yeah.
I guess some people write fan fiction.
I bet there has been many fan fiction stories written about that. But I mean, she never intended to write a sequel, and then she wrote 3 other books. But she told them, "Does it matter?" Because he was free.
Yes.
So, talk about themes, and it seems to me that there's a lot of similarity there with Maggot Moon. Okay, you guys. So, great discussion. Oliver, you added so much to our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Oliver.
Really appreciate that. I want to finish with a quote from Gordon Wells. It's at the end, a Dewey one, where he said, "In directing the activities of the young, society determines its own future. Since the young at a given time will at some later date compose the society of that period, the latter's nature will largely turn upon the direction children's activities were given at an earlier period." It matters. It matters how we define literacy and literature and how we create the experiences to teach them. Now, you guys, I've got a foolproof method this week. Let's see. I created a wall wisher, and everybody can go to the wall wisher. Okay, once I say bye-bye, you can go to the wall wisher, create your little note. Have you used wall wisher before? You
Yes.
double click. You don't sign in, no names, nothing. You just double click, create a little note, and pull it over to answer whatever prompt you want to. I'll show you. This is what it looks like. Let me pull it up right here, and you can see. Yeah, it's very, very cool. So what will show right here, and I'll share this. And it's real easy. You just click and write your note. And again, don't put a name. Click off and put it wherever you want it. Like, oh, book club, most engaged moment, book club. Okay, so somebody's already into it. Thank you, Oliver. Well, thank you for being here. Question A with Oliver was our most engaged moment. So you got the idea, okay? It's a really cool tool. So thanks for the feedback. Everybody had a great week, and I look forward to the next collaborative critical inquiry. Take care.